Dr. Gene, welcome to the Tales of Leadership podcast, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Listen, I was just jamming out to your music there. I like that. That was very good.
Yeah, I always play it one because it kind of recenters me before we dive into a topic, which is passionate about me as leadership. So it kind of just gets me mentally ready to go.
Yeah, very good. You win best podcast music of the year.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, so that's good. I'll take that. So I think the first thing to start off with for our listeners is just provide an overview of who you are.
So I'm Dr. Gene Coughlin. I'm the founder and current CEO of the Resilience Building Leader Program. We are a leadership certification agency. We certify people in building and leading resilient teams. And it's called the Resilience Building Leadership Professional Series of certifications. And so I founded that back in 2018 and have been running it ever since.
Yeah.
Before that, I was way back in the day. I was in the Marines. I retired from the Marines about 16 years ago. Ironically, also about 16 pounds ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a correlation there. I'm not looking forward to being retired for 30 years. I don't suppose if I keep that up. But, yeah, about 16 years ago, 2007, I retired. And then after that, went to work like a lot of folks do, the kind of, Marine officer employment program. I went to work for a defense contractor for a couple of years. Then I went back to school to earn my doctorate in education, organizational leadership at Pepperdine University, and worked for the Red Cross out here in Southern California, running some programs for them. And then the last thing I did before I founded RBLP is I worked for a big company called AECOM. It's a Fortune 100 or 200 infrastructure development company. So they build large buildings and airports and football stadiums and things like that all over the world. So I worked at their global headquarters here in Los Angeles doing some change management work for them. So.
Oh, wow. So you spent 20 years in the Marine Corps, right?
Yep, 20.
Yeah, that's
kind of a quitter, just 20. Did 20 and then got out. Yep, sure did. I was enlisted for 14 years, and then I became a chief warrant officer for the last 6 years. I was an infantry weapons officer in the Marines. So that's an infantry weapons officer is an expert on the tactical employment of weapons, all of the weapons that you find in an infantry battalion. So everything from pistols up to machine guns and mortars and tow missiles and things like that. It seems like a lifetime ago. I can barely remember any of that stuff. But I did 20 and then got out.
Yeah, if you would ask me, like, what's the minimum effective range of like an M4 or 240, or hey, we'll charge one of a 60 millimeter more. I used to be able to just read those off the top of my head, but now it's gone. I need to make more room in my brain.
Yeah, I don't remember much of that at all, but it was good times. Those were formative years during that time. Taught me a lot about training. Taught me a lot about leadership during that time period. And then I refined that with a lot of work in the civilian sector after I left active duty.
And I think that's a beautiful place to start, because to kind of get to where you are right now, there's a journey that led you to that. And that's where I really would love to start. Where do you see your leadership journey starting? Was that in the Marine Corps?
I actually joined the Marine Corps kind of late. I was 23 when I went to boot camp. So I had worked, a couple of jobs. before I entered the Marine Corps. So I saw some good and some bad leadership in those jobs before my military service. But I would say certainly my time in the Marine Corps is what got me interested in this idea of building and leading resilient teams, which is what I did some initial research on when I was at Pepperdine. And then when I founded RBLP, that sort of served as the impetus to do some more job task analysis, what we call role delineation stuff in the certification world. But my time in the service certainly is what introduced me to the idea of that teams of people could be resilient. Individuals, of course, are resilient. Teams of people can be resilient, and organizations themselves can also be resilient, meaning that they can overcome adversity, adapt, and grow together because of that adversity. So the idea of, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That when you were a kid, and that is literally true. You go through a tough time, go through some adversity by yourself or with a team in a work environment. And as you overcome that adversity, you learn, sometimes the hard way. You learn from what works, what doesn't work. You learn from mistakes, and you bounce back from the adversity to get through it. And then you come out stronger on the other end. You adapt and grow as a result. So anybody that's played team sports kind of knows that. If you've been if you played football or baseball or anything and had some tough times as a team, you learn from those tough times. You practice, you get better, and you come back stronger for going through that experience.
Yeah, I think one of the fundamental truths of building resilient teams that at least that I've learned in the military is going through crucible events. And I think being in acquisitions now as an acquisition officer and being a infantry officer in a kind of prior service in the National Guard before that, in the military, it seems like we chase adversity. I had a battalion commander once tell me when I was at a brigade live fire that leaders are placed in friction points. Like you should be where friction is happening so you can help your team kind of get through those. But I think crucible events is what creates organizations, teams, sports, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but makes them great. I think that's the thing that separates an ordinary, as John Maxwell likes to say, from an extraordinary. And it's that just a little bit extra going through those crucible events. And like how you said it, and I love that, overcome, adapt, and grow. It's simple.
Yep. Yeah, I absolutely believe that's true. Adversity can be a blessing. Adversity can be learned from. So it's part of building and leading resilient teams is reframing the thought process around the tough times, like you just did. It's looking at adversity as an opportunity to overcome, adapt, and grow. An opportunity to get better. If you're on a sports team, you look forward to facing some tough teams early in the season. You want to do that because you want to be tested, figure out what works, and you want to learn from that so that you can get better as you head into the rest of the season. So tough times are something to in your personal life, in your work life. That's what our training and certifications are about, workplace adversity. It's looking forward, taking advantage of those opportunities to grow, get better, become more competitive as an organization, as a team over time.
While you were in the Marine Corps, I'm curious, what were some of the challenges that you had to face, some of those adversaries that you had to face, struggles that you've had to face, and how did you overcome those, especially as a team?
Yeah, so I have several combat deployments during that time. That was my unit. I was with 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines.
Oh yeah,
during the march to Baghdad. So that was 3-4 was the unit that ended up getting into Baghdad to Firdrouz Square. We pulled down the statue Saddam Hussein. Of course, that got a lot of that got a lot of attention. We didn't realize at the time what the impact that would have. Certainly a lot of adversity during the march to Baghdad. We were back less than a year later, and 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines fought in what we call Fallujah Part 1, April of 2004. So certainly those combat experiences were, fraught with plenty of adversity, and you get through that with a team. I tell people all the time that you cannot reach your full potential, your true potential by yourself. You do that together with a team. True in sports, true in business, true in family, true in all aspects of life, that you reach your full potential together with a team, because it's with a team that you go through those times that steel you, that make you harder, and the idea of iron sharpens iron. This idea that you get better and tougher over time is certainly true. The research that we did, it's, you mentioned going to the point of friction. The research that we did, we ended up with a leader task that came out of that job task analysis that we called being there when the going gets tough. It was the best. It was the best descriptor of the task as was described. When you do this kind of research, you talk to people about what they're doing in the real world. It's irrelevant what's being taught anywhere. You talk to people that are doing a job in the workplace, and you say, what are you doing to build and lead resilient teams? What leader actions are you taking? What leader actions have you seen others take that were successful? And what came back was this idea of being there when the going gets tough, which translates into in the military of going to the point of friction, not to micromanage, but to be there. Sometimes just emotionally, mentally, you get there physically and you don't necessarily take over, but oftentimes when folks see a leader at the point of friction, it gives them a little bit of calm, or the idea that they've got some backup there, that they're not in it. They're not in it alone. It's also, by the way, a great time to observe your team. To be there when the pressure's on, so that you can see how well they're performing.
That's a great point. I went to that Proverbs and I looked it up while you were talking, because it was on the tip of my tongue and I couldn't find it. But Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. So I love that, and I usually have that memorized, but I could not find it. And it's so true, is that when you're surrounding yourself with a team or another person, at the end of the day, what are they doing for you? They're holding you accountable to what your responsibilities are as a leader, because I think that comes first. The responsibilities. We all have a duty, title, or position, things that we must do. But when we don't do those things, then after the fact, we have to be held accountable. And if you surround yourself with those winners, those people on the team that want to push you, they're going to just naturally make you better. And you kind of, just how you said it again, going to the point of friction. I love that.
Yep.
So kind of moving forward with you transitioning out of the Marine Corps, what was some of the biggest challenges that you've had to run through? Because I've had a lot of people on here that are getting out of the military, and probably a lot of people that listen to this podcast are in the military. And at the end of the day, one day we're going to hang up our uniform. And I know that's a very challenging and a stressful time for a lot of people.
Right. There's a difference. I think we all sort of know it intuitively that if you're talking in terms of leadership, most people consider, they look to military service members, and they know that that leadership's a big deal, that they've had responsibility for, if they were in for any length of time, that they were in charge of other people, and sometimes in some really tough situations. And so, but there is leadership, there's a difference, I would say. And it doesn't really matter whether we agree with whether military people agree with it or not. But I would say there's a perception in the general population. Remember, I don't know, what is it, 98 or 97, some percent, a huge percent of people have never been in the military. And so they're really unfamiliar for the most part of what a lot of people do day to day, or their responsibilities, leadership responsibilities for others. And and I think they're shaped a lot by what they see on TV.
Yeah.
I was in the Marines, so all Marines are, kind of crazy and crayon eaters. And
I'm the infantry, so we're that close. We're brothers.
Yeah. So, but so there are some differences, and the challenge for military folks when they get out is to adapt their leadership style, the vernacular that they use, the methods to a degree, temperament, their emotional intelligence, if you will, to the new environment. No, there's not very many civilian employers that are looking for someone ex-military, former military, to come in and act like they're still in the military. Now, and I'm not saying any of that is right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just telling you, that's my perception. I've been out a while, talked to a lot of people, and that have hired a lot of people, of course. And I can tell you a personal story of my own. I was at AECOM, the company that I worked for here in Los Angeles. I was actually told by some folks that were helping me get into that company, and I was going to be working on the C-suite. I wasn't a C-suite guy, but my office was on that floor at the global headquarters in Century City in Los Angeles here. And the advice I was given was to not don't overplay the retired military guy.
Oh, wow.
The combat tours, the decorations, all of that. Don't, it's not, he actually told me, listen, folks just aren't really impressed with that per se. And in fact, it could be a bit intimidating. It's kind of the unknown. Is this, this guy going to blow up one day in the office here? If he was just, in combat a decade ago, is he okay? What's it going to be like? We don't want this. This is not the Marines.
Yeah.
So it's, and we have military folks have to play by the rules of the new game. And so you have to adapt, I think, the style a little bit, vernacular. For military folks that earn our certification as they transition, we think that helps. The feedback we're getting is that it does help, because we introduce terms that they may not have been familiar with, like psychological safety and constructive dialogue and mental models and these these types of things that they're concepts that they are aware of. They just may not be familiar with those names, or the idea of organizational learning, the relationship between learning and change, the experiential learning cycle that teams go through, how we learn from our experience. They know all these things because they've been doing them. They may not have known the terms to put to them. So there's definitely some challenges. If there weren't challenges with military folks transitioning, there wouldn't be so many agencies and nonprofits. And there's a proliferation of these people doing great work. But that, it's the market is what created the need for all of that assistance to help people transition. So
I love that advice, is being able to adapt your leadership to kind of the season of life that you're in. And I've had a blessing just from my side of transitioning from the infantry into acquisitions, and not just any acquisition job, getting put into kind of PEO aviation. So working with like aviators and civilians from that sector. And it's funny that the perception that I have working with civilians now is that coming in with a Ranger tab and my CIB and airborne wings and all those things, that I'm going to be a totally different person. But one of the beauties in going through the training that you've created right now too is something that stuck out to me today when I was going through that, is being vulnerable and authentic.
Yep.
And that's in the first model that we're kind of going through. And that in essence is me. Because at the core of my leadership philosophy, J.R. Flatter kind of helped me go through a coaching course. And he talks about building your house of leadership.
Yep.
Well, my house is built on meekness, and I call it hugs, which gets even cheesier, right? So humility, understanding, gratitude, right, and having a servant heart. Those are the four main characteristics that I try to go in every job I have. And it served me well, because I can do well in a very alpha driven organization if I need to be that guy. But I also can be empathetic. I can listen. I can be vulnerable to others. And that's the key, sir. You just said it, is being able to adapt your leadership. And it took me a very long time to realize that your leadership style is not universal to every job. It has to change, like the willow tree in the wind. Where the wind takes you, you have to be able to maneuver.
Yeah, I would agree. It's incumbent upon the service member to make the adjustments required to fit in. I mean, that's really what we're doing. It's a cultural shift, and you have to put in the work to fit in to the new environment, whether you think that's fair or not.
Yeah,
doesn't really matter. But the fact is that, I don't know what the number is. It's a pretty large number. It's like 98. What is it? 3% of the,
I think
2 or 3% will serve in the military.
So I've heard 1% joins the military, but even 1% from them do combat arms.
Yeah. So it's a cultural change that people have. It's not easy either. I'm sure I'm guilty of still trying to make that adjustment from time. I run my own show now, so I've got a lot more. I've got a lot more latitude to screw up, is what I
love that. Yeah,
quite frankly. So, but I've got a pretty good team around me that keeps me in check for the most part. But
there's a couple words that I'm not allowed to use in acquisitions because it has a very negative side, like kill, for example. So if I end a program or I transition a program, I've been forbidden from saying the word kill. So I was like, okay, I will not use that word.
Yeah, but we do. In the military, it's it's okay to fat shame somebody in the military. Hey, there's height and weight standards, and somebody may say, listen, you look like you're getting pretty fat to me. You look terrible in that uniform.
Yeah,
and, that is not something you can.
Oh, absolutely not.
That's not something you say in the civilian world. So it's very different. It's culturally different, and it's just a process of adapting. Anybody that's fought in a war overseas, and the cultural challenge that you face when you're immersed in another, say the Middle East. It's a different type of. It's different. And it's not quite that drastic, a military person going in the civilian world, of course, but it is different. You just have to recognize that there's some new tricks to learn. And there are a lot of people out there I see online, particularly on LinkedIn, that are helping service members with that transition. I see a lot of really good advice being given out there. I see a lot of people giving of their time to help folks with the transition, folks that have kind of been there and done that, made that transition, helping other folks out. So it's really good to see that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the point of being at the point of friction. So kind of being our brother's keeper is that when someone transitions out of the military, it's a very difficult time. And I've seen soldiers take the dark path, and I've seen soldiers take the path of light. And that's one of the reasons that I've done all of this, is that I'm trying to inject more light into this world. And
Yeah,
it's funny.
I think you're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I wanted to provide some context too for our listeners, where you said like you could literally call someone fat in the military
Yeah.
under UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice. I can hold soldiers accountable and literally kick them out of the military if they don't meet a certain standard. And that standard is important because I've seen it in combat. If you're overweight or out of shape, you become a detriment to your organization, and it will get people killed, at least from the world we come from. So it's a totally different mindset.
Right.
So kind of continuing on, sir, this is where I would love to kind of hear, when did your spark happen? The moment that you become deeply passionate and purposeful on the path that you're today. So you get out of the military and then you go work a civilian job. When did it dawn on you that, hey, I can help bring change in organizations by building more resilient leaders?
Yeah, I think certainly during the first 10 years that I was out of the military, what I was observing in government contracting, which is almost like being in the government still.
Yeah.
A large nonprofit like the Red Cross, a large Fortune, whatever, 1 or 200, like AECOM, is I noticed that the level, I didn't see the level of teamwork that I had seen in the military, and I also saw that teams. I like to say that the best measure of a team is how well it performs under pressure. Some teams fall apart, and that's okay. I mean, and that's, sometimes you have to reconstitute a team to keep going forward. I'm a baseball fan. The Dodgers are not going to get into the playoffs with the same roster they had a couple of days ago at the season opener. Some people will be let go. Some people will go down to the minors. Some will get injured. Stuff happens, right? And so, the same team isn't going to move forward. But I noticed that when teams were operating under pressure, that they weren't nearly as cohesive as some of the teams I had seen. And anybody that plays a lot of sports or really likes sports, probably even without being in the military, you may have witnessed some of the same things. We all remember teams that we worked on that were, really kind of tight and cohesive, very good climate. Everybody felt a sense of purpose for what they were doing. And so when I got to the point where I decided to get a doctorate in education at Pepperdine, I determined that was the topic that I wanted to study. I wanted to do research on this idea of collective resilience, the idea that teams can be collectively resilient, that they can, get knocked down and then bounce back together and adapt and overcome and get stronger. And so that's, I would say that's when I really started looking at that from a academic, scientific research point of view. And I began to see evidence that validated sort of my gut instinct on some of these things, that other people had done some research in that regard. And then through my program at Pepperdine, the process of researching and writing a dissertation, that's what I took a look at. And that's what really, that got me interested in it. And then when I founded RBLP, we sort of took that idea to the next level. We couldn't use what I had done. We needed to start new research, but we got a lot of the same, some of the same results, generally speaking. and I'd say that's when the light came on for me. And then the other thing too was I noticed the reason I founded RBLP is I was familiar with certification programs like certifications in project management and human resources management, IT, a lot of different IT certifications through Microsoft or Oracle or Amazon Web Services, what have you. But there wasn't a certification that sort of validated, assessed a brilliance at the basics of leadership. And so I determined to, that job task analysis and role delineation that we did was for the purpose of eventually determining specific leader tasks. We ended up with 29 leader tasks across 5 competency domains, and we mapped them to 3 levels of leadership: frontline supervisors, middle managers, and senior leaders, depending on when you first got a lot of exposure to that particular task. And I saw this gap in the marketplace, that there was, you could assess that somebody had basic project management skills, and through a certification exam, you could assess that somebody had basic HR skills, but there was no basic certification exam for leadership, those things that we traditionally called soft skills.
Yeah.
And part of that was because it is difficult to assess them, which is why we had to develop an oral exam. We discovered through this process that assessing those skills on a written sort of true false multiple choice test was simply not possible. That leadership knowledge was too experience based, too contextualized, what we call tacit. It's another term we introduce people to in the training program and the certification exam. So explicit knowledge can be recorded, written down easily, maybe not easily, but it could be transferred in writing. Tacit knowledge is in your head. It's very contextualized. It's when you say to somebody, well, no, hold on, let me explain this. Let me tell you what this really means. That's tacit knowledge coming out. And so we determined that the best way to do the assessment, to do the certification exam, was through an oral exam. And that's what we developed and validated. And we've done thousands of them now. We're very good at it.
So there's a resource that I want to share with everyone that has helped me going through the program that you developed. It's the Army credentialing program. And this is something that I wish I would have known when I was a rifle company commander and HHC company commander, because that's when you learn all these resources when you're not actually leading soldiers anymore.
Right.
But the Army will give you $4,000 a year, no strings attached, no ADSOs, to go seek better credentialing programs. And one of those is the RBLP program. And you can go through that, get the accreditation, and become a better leader. And I wish that resource, I genuinely wish I would have known that before. But it's funny when you said soft skills. My 06 that I'm sitting in working for right now in uncrewed aircraft systems asked me this question. Came in, Josh, like, who are you? All this stuff. And she looked at me. She's like, Josh, what is your soft skills? And I'm thinking, like, as an infantry officer, it's like, I'm not soft. I don't know what you're talking about. I had no idea what she meant by soft skills, and it's talking about like translating or crossing the bridge between civilian and military. In my mind, I still have not made that. So that's what really drew me to your program, is that what are my soft skills, and really thinking on those, because that's the key to, I think, illumination, is sitting down and reflecting. And I love now how you've explained it, that leadership it's not inherently a set definition. It's a definition that we learn through our own experiences and the wisdom that we pulled through that. And It's really hard to take a test on those things, but it's much easier if someone has that experience to contextualize it, exactly what you just said, tacit information
Yep.
Like, I can't put that on paper, but I can tell you what it is.
Yeah, and what we found out through the job task analysis, that there are certain leader tasks that fit into competency domains that are universal. So, in the same way that, project management, for example, the project management professional certification, which is a great one, we're complementary to that. I would recommend all project managers also earn our certification as well. They're complementary. But the project management certification is, it's a brilliance at the basics. And then from that, it's applicable to project management in healthcare, project management in the military, project management in IT and retail and manufacturing, because there are certain things that are fundamental to that, to the managing of projects. And that's what they did at the Project Management Institute. They did role delineation studies where they determined across a wide swath of different types of organizations what are the basics of project management that everybody needs to know, that they can then build on. And that's what we did. We found out that there are certain leader tasks that are universal. So you mentioned earlier, going to the point of friction, which came out of our study as we called it, being there when the going gets tough, because that's the best we could. That's what it came through as. And even though nobody may teach a class in that, it doesn't matter. That's an actual task that that leaders do in a variety of industries. It's not unique to the military. Manufacturing leaders need to be there. I was working with somebody once. They were in healthcare, and I said, and they helped process Medicare claims and help people get Medicare healthcare covered by Medicare. And I asked her, she was a director at this company, and I asked her what, being there when the going, after she had done the readings and had done a reflection question. So she came in prepared to talk about when does she there? What's going when is it that the going gets tough in her world? And in her world, it was around inspection time. The government apparently inspects these companies that administer Medicare health plans, and that I don't know if that happened once or twice a year, but in the month or so leading up to that was the tough time. So she said, that's not when I go on vacation. That's not when I take time off. That's when my spouse knows that I'm going to be working a few late nights, because a lot of my folks are going to be working late, trying to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and make sure that we're ready for this inspection. And oftentimes I'm really of no help to them as they're working these extra hours, except to be there for support, to go get the pizzas. She would use that opportunity to get to know people a bit better. So that's, another leader task is enforce accountability. That's, of course, universal. At the middle manager level, encouraging constructive dialogue, universal across all industries. Building new mental models, again, universal. At the senior leader level, promoting a shared vision. That's not unique to any one industry. It's applicable to all. So this, the idea of being brilliant at the basics, so that companies, organizations can then build on top of that the same way they do with these other certifications is what we were going for.
I love the shared vision one, because all of those tough times, forced accountability, kind of constructive candor, how I kind of put it, and then shared vision are all things that I've been able to replicate. And this is another reason that I love being in the military, because it tests me every single time. I've been in for 16 years now, and now I'm at that tipping point where I'm a field grade officer. But before that, every single job I was only in for a year at a time. So I had to rapidly learn. I had to get results, and then I moved to something else. And then just it's a model. And I've learned an actual model of what makes me successful in those jobs, and now it's just me replicating them. But one of the things that you said, shared vision, and I was interviewing David Petraeus a couple of days ago, and a vision is all about having an idea at a strategic level, and then being able to communicate that idea orally and writtenly, being able to have people see it in their head. Where are we going? And then start executing that. So now you're getting their heart aligned and their hands in, and they're doing the work and then refining. And that's the beauty about it's just a loop.
Yeah, when leaders, subordinate leaders throughout an organization understand where you're going as an organization, it allows them to make better decisions. I'll give you an example. We had, I was working with someone one time that they were an East Coast organization. They had the vision was to expand to the West Coast, open West Coast offices in the 2 to 3, 4 year future. This person was negotiating a contract for a supplier, and they had options. One of the supplier that seemed to be the best fit had particular expertise on the East Coast. In fact, you could characterize them as being an East Coast supplier. One of the others that were in the running for this contract, who didn't seem as qualified on the East Coast, but also had a West Coast operation. And so this particular leader, in assessing which contract, who they were going to award this contract, because they were aware that in the future, the boss's plan was to get to the West Coast, they realized that if they'd have limited themselves to this, supplier that was very good on the East Coast, the number one on the East Coast, that they would have limited their ability. That supplier couldn't have grown with them to the West Coast when they needed it. So he was able to use his judgment based on having a good understanding of the shared vision. The vision was shared. Everyone understood. Everyone that was listening understood what the future was going to look like in 3 or 4 years. And he was making decisions in the present day that would support that vision. And that can be, to put a dollar figure on that type of situational awareness and how that adds to your ability to make decisions is significant.
There's a great metaphor that I like to think of this at the strategic, operational, and the tactical level of leadership, at least in the military. Strategic level leaders have basically free reign to create whatever vision they want. They're setting the vision. And then below that, the operational, it's like a 3-lane highway. It's not quite as big with the latitude left or right limits, but you have your general bounds, and you have a little bit of latitude to make some of your own discretions. But at the tactical level, you're on a bridge. You don't have the latitude to really build that vision outside of what operationally and strategically have been aligned, but you're within that, and your left and right limits. So it becomes a lot tighter as you're getting down the waterfall.
Yeah. Your job is, that's why we mapped that particular leader task, promoting a shared vision, which is, this ties into collective resilience. When you understand where the organization's going, it's easier to bounce, to get through adversity, adapt, and grow as a result. And so we mapped that particular leader task to the senior leader, because that's who's really responsible for sharing it, getting it out there. Now, of course, the middle manager and the frontline supervisor, the middle manager has a responsibility to share it as well and get it out there. And then the frontline supervisor and middle managers, they have a responsibility to know it and try to make decisions based on knowing that. If you know where you're going, if you know where the end result is, it's like driving a car from one city to the next. The city you're going to is the vision. The mission is to drive there. The strategy, which route you're going to take to get there, is, could change. Strategy changes all the time based on conditions. And so if you're if you're on the way and you run into road construction or accidents or what have you, in this analogy, then as long as you know where you're going, then you can come up with a different plan. You can adapt your strategy based on the situation as it presents itself, and make sure that you're headed towards the right city. in that
I love that. So yeah. I'm a walking Army regulation probably. So there's 4 different doctrinal definitions of an obstacle: block, turn, fix, or disrupt. And when you're executing someone's vision, and I've learned that the hard way, is that you're going to encounter those types of obstacles. But exactly what you just said, great leaders don't micromanage their subordinate leaders to get to the desired end state. They know what the end state looks like, but they give them the latitude to maneuver around those obstacles. That's beautifully said.
Yep. Ideally,
yeah, in a perfect world.
Yep. Micromanagement. I tell my team sometimes that, of course I would say this, but micromanagement gets a little bit of a bad rap sometimes. I mean, everybody would like their boss to be a team player and more involved, but they don't want micromanagement. So there's a fine line between these things. But everybody hates meetings, but they love collaboration. Well, I mean, make up your mind. What you hate is really bad meetings. What you hate is micromanagement that was unnecessary. So there's a fine line between all of that, for sure.
I love that. So what's the future for RBLP? Where are you trying to take this?
So we're right now we're in the process of partnering with more education and training partners. Our education partners are colleges and universities that teach the curriculum that we developed. When we did the research and came up with the exam, we also developed some training to go with it, because the complete training package to get folks ready to take the exam that was created based on what we heard did not exist. So we created a training. We did it ourselves for about 18 months, early 2020 into 2021. We did the training ourselves. We had a bunch of instructors all over the place teaching this. And then we decided to spin that part off. In fact, to get GI Bill approved, which we are now, we're approved by the GI Bill. The GI Bill pays for the exam, and they'll also pay for the training once some of our partners get their paperwork back from the Department of Veteran Affairs. But if you're to get approved by the Department of Veteran Affairs, if you're the certification body, which we are, if your job is to execute the exam, to do that research that develop the exam, update it from time to time. If you're the certification body, then you cannot be involved in the training. You can develop curriculum based off, not off of the exam, but based off of the competency domains. So you can take those competency domains and you can develop good training, which should also set you up to do well on the exam, because the exam questions are based on the same competency domain. So they both have the same origin, right? Which came out of the research. So we did that training ourselves, but then we started partnering with folks that would deliver the training. And at first it was training and workforce development companies that were doing that for us. And then we started partnering with universities. We partnered with Pepperdine, my alma mater, out here on the West Coast. We partnered with Georgia Southern University on the East Coast. And we kind of test drove that, if you will, for 6 or 8 months. And we decided that really was working well. We liked that. We think that would be a good way to get to our vision. Our vision is to build a worldwide community of practice committed to building and leading resilient teams. That's what we want people talking about. Similar to, several decades ago, the Project Management Institute wanted to make project management a household old term. We want to make building and leading resilient teams ubiquitous. Everybody knows it's something that they need to learn how to do. So we started partnering, and now that's the future, is to continue to build more partnerships, colleges and universities. We've recently partnered with Virginia Tech University, R1 Research University in Virginia. We're partnered with the University of Texas at San Antonio, Texas A&M, Suffolk University in Boston, Western Kentucky University. Starting to partner with some community colleges now, Albany Tech in Georgia, Big Sandy Community and Technical College in Kentucky. I know I'm missing a handful here, and we've got a whole bunch more in the chute. We should be partnered with Spelman University, the HBCU in Atlanta pretty soon. We're partnering with a college in Canada. So we partner with colleges, universities. They teach the course that the people learn how to build and lead resilient teams, the curriculum that we developed. Those that are up for the challenge will come to us and sit for the certification exam. Not everybody will. Some will just take the knowledge back into the workforce. Not everybody that gets human resources training sits for a human resource management certification exam. Some do. Some people climb mountains just because they're there. Some people take exams just because they're there. And they have good education benefits. Like you said, you mentioned the military's got good benefits. The veterans have it through the GI Bill. Where a lot of the universities that are teaching our course have corporate partnerships with big corporations like Amazon and Walmart and so on, FedEx, and these big companies have good education benefits, and they go to universities, continuing education programs to find courses to use, and that's where we're at. So that's the future for us, is to partner. We're also partnering with workforce training and development companies that do a little bit more of the business to business type of work. The work, like what you're doing in the military, is a voluntary program. No one's telling you to do it. It's your education benefit. You're using it how you see fit. That's a business to consumer sale, if you will. But sometimes there are business to business opportunities where a small to medium sized company might say, you know what, we want to get 40 people trained, and a handful of them may take the exam, but it's going to be mandatory. We're not asking anybody if they want to do it. We're not giving them benefits to do it in their part-time. We're going to make this part of the work day, and we're going to bring an instructor in either on site or virtually, for the 7 different sessions, and folks will get the training and then put it to use, and some maybe take the exam. So that's the future for us. Continue to partner. There are 4,000 colleges and universities in America. We're partnered with less than 20 of them now. We want to be partnered with, over 100 in the next year, 300 or 400 the year after that, and then go from there. But that's the future for us, building a worldwide community of practice committed to building and leading resilient teams.
So my wife tells me, like, the after action review for every podcast, quit saying you love that, but I love that. So starting leadership development, especially for academia, for young, I'm going to say kids, because I'm 36 now,
right?
But young kids is so vitally important, because
everyone that gets a bachelor's degree should take a 7-week course in building and leading resilient teams. They're going to be a better employee. They're going to be more prepared to step into a leadership role when given a chance. And by the way, that opportunity for a leadership role is going to come much quicker than they know, because there's opportunities for shared leadership and stepping up informally to lead well prior to ever being given a title in the workplace. And so we think that eventually this is not just a continuing education offering, but it's an offering also to undergrads to what they call stack on top of their 4-year, 2-year or 4-year degree. This micro credential in building and leading resilient teams, going to make them better prepared for the workforce.
And I also love how these modules basically walk you from the lowest level of leadership to the highest level of leadership. And I'm a weirdo, so I've journaled. I see 6 phases of leadership, and the first one is universal. It's ourselves. We have to learn to lead ourselves well and master ourselves. So when those opportunities come, then we're ready for them. And then continuing all the way up to me is summit leadership, which is kind of phase 6. And I learned from what I know, military operations. So I broke it down as like a battle plan, 6 phases of leadership.
Yep.
But I'm sold on this program, and I know that it's going to help, especially in acquisitions. So I'm going to continue to be a champion of this as I go through the military. And I don't see it. I'm going to stay in until they kick me out. So we'll see how far I can take it, because I love what I do.
Yeah, and getting certified isn't the end of the journey. It's really the beginning.
Yeah.
Of the journey. There's a recertification requirement every 3 years. We've been doing this for more than 3 years. So we have people recertifying as we speak. Today, people recertified. And when they recertify, they have to go back and do a written assignment that's a reflection on the previous 3 years and how they've applied those leader tasks and supporting concepts in the workplace. You have to write a narrative, again, trying to turn that tacit knowledge into explicit as much as they can, and they get that down, and that's one thing. We also have an app, RBLP community app, that is available for everyone to download, and we upload 13 podcasts from a variety of vetted sources. Good podcasts. Yeah, you may find yours in there. And it's 13 hours, one at the top of every hour during the start of work on the East Coast to the end on the West Coast, 7 days a week. Don't worry, we're not making somebody work those hours. It's a scheduling program inside of the technology. So the app there's good leadership podcasts in there from a variety of different sources that we encourage people to use. We also publish a newsletter that's a compilation of blog posts about leadership from a variety of vetted sources. And here pretty soon, we also have a reading list. We encourage our credential holders to read 3 to 4 books a year. That's on the website, and those are books directly related to the basics. It's a deep dive into some of the basics. So Amy Edmondson, scholar, has a book on psychological safety that's very good. That's on that reading list, and that's a deep dive into some of the encourage constructive dialogue leader task that you're going to get into eventually. And so pretty soon we're going to be offering some continuing education courses based on those books. So it'll be a 90-minute or 2-hour online event where an instructor will take a cohort through a deep dive discussion of the salient points of the key takeaways of some of these books. The really tough ones may have two sessions of that length, but those are coming soon. We're putting those together right now. But reading is something. Reading books, reading blog posts about leadership, and listening to podcasts about leadership is something that everybody can do. And we tee up all of those resources so that you can continue to learn. Because like I said, getting certified is not the end of the journey. That's how you join the community of practice. That's how you get closer to the center of it, is by getting certified, and then you just keep sharpening the saw, if you will, to borrow a Covey expression, over time. So
I am going to look at those required readings or recommended readings, because that's an area that I always struggle, because I love reading. I'm an avid reader, but they're kind of like all over the place. So my next book that I'm going to read is Brene Brown, Dare to Lead: Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willington, and now I think I'm reading The Map of Consciousness by Dr. David.
The Brene Brown book is in our reading list.
I got 1 out of 3.
You did. You mentioned something about candor earlier. Radical Candor is a great.
Kim Scott.
Yep, that book is on our reading list, and you'll see as you go through the program that books like that really illuminate some of the ideas that were. I mean, there are entire books on the topic of trust, right? So we have a leader task called Earn Trust. You know, you can certainly read quite a bit just on that single topic alone.
So we're at the end of this. I have the final show segment.
That went pretty quick. You made it pretty. Well, I don't want to say painless. That makes it sound like I was at the dentist, but that was quite enjoyable, Josh.
No, thank you for being a guest on here. So this is the final show segment that I always do. I call it the Killer Bees. So I'm trying to not use that word as much, but I can't help it. It's ingrained in me in the infantry. But be brief, be brilliant, be present, and be gone. So same 4 questions I ask everyone. Are you ready?
Go.
So what do you believe separates a good leader from an extraordinary leader?
The ability to lead a team through the tough times.
So you've already given a lot of answers to this one, but what is one resource, just one, that you could think of off the top of your head that you could recommend to our listeners?
Our reading list, even if you don't have good education benefits and can't afford the training and certification right now, download our app, sign up for the newsletter, the blog posts, and get into the reading list. All of that is free. It's vetted. It's curated. It's ready to go.
I love it. So question 3 is, if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I think I would have started my education much earlier. I waited. I didn't have a lick of school. Well, I had maybe a couple of classes when I retired from the Marines. I went to school for 10 straight years. I earned most of them, some of them are hanging behind me, but I earned an associate's degree and I hung it on the wall, and a bachelor's and I hung it on the wall. My first master's, hung it on the wall. Then I got an MBA and I put it up there. And then I earned the doctorate in education and I put it up there. But 10 straight years of full-time school while I was working was very challenging. And I wish that I had gotten after that earlier. So this, I think, is advice, not just for the military folks that are out there, but for anybody that has an opportunity to go to school to learn something. A trade, skills, short courses, micro credentials, learn how to use Excel better, what have you.
Yeah.
I was so consumed by my work in the military that I kept putting all of that off. So my younger self, I wish had started school a lot earlier.
That's a great answer. So the final one. How can our listeners find you and how can they add value to your mission?
Yep. So find us is easy. It's rblp.com. Just rblp.com. If you type that into Google, the first 200 or 300 search results will be about us or the partners that we have that provide the training. If you want to talk to somebody that's been certified, go to LinkedIn, type RBLP into the search box, and then click the people tab, and it'll return over 1,100 people with RBLP in their profile. You're probably already connected to some of them. If not, find some people that resonate with you and connect with them and ask them what they think about the training wherever they happen to get it. And the certification exam that was administered by us. And what people could do to help us advance this mission is just to consider this idea that this idea of building and leading resilient teams. That it's the team's ability to get through the tough time is what really separates it That's how organizations adapt and grow. It's how sports teams win championships. It's how militaries win wars. It's how we get somebody to the moon. It's how Edison invented a light bulb. And so this idea of trying and failing and trying and failing and running into obstacles, not just persistence, grit, perseverance, and passion for long-term goals, but sometimes we run into a real dead stop. We get knocked backwards and we have to bounce back. And you do that together with a team in the workplace. So people can help us by thinking through that idea, see if that resonates with their lived leader follower experience. And if it does, start taking a look at the work that we're doing, and hopefully be able to take the course and maybe sit for the exam.
Sir, this has been a phenomenal podcast. A little bit over. I didn't even get half of the questions I wanted to be answered, but this is tremendous value, and thank you for being intentional with me.
Okay, no worries. Part 2 in the summer.
Yeah, part 2 in the summer. It'd be in person maybe, because I'm moving up to DC.
Oh, I don't live in DC. I live in Burbank, California. But I was in DC recently for a conference. In fact, I'm heading back to DC at the end of next week for the American Council on Education conference back there. Yeah, we could maybe we'll do a part 2 at some time. Keep me posted on your journey through the training.
Absolutely.
That you're doing with one of our partners, and I've enjoyed you've been a really good host. I enjoyed it, and I wouldn't be surprised if not just the episode with me on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Tales of Leadership podcast isn't already being fed into our app. So I'd encourage people to go take a look.
I'm humbled by that, sir. Thank you, and have a great night.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.